Hello, and welcome to another edition of Atlas Information Live. I'm your host, Attlas Alex, and today I welcome you to my beautiful Japanese-appointed workshop, because we're going to be talking about apprenticeship today. We're going to be talking about patience understudy. Last week, we spoke of the power of patience under fire and the importance of developing and cultivating patience, but doing so consciously, doing so with awareness of what it is we may be tolerating and what it is we may be wallpapering over with our patience. And we went into great depth, and particularly when it comes to relationships, because it's the people around us who can push our buttons the most. And while patience is a virtue, it can, if it is practiced dogmatically, automatically, mechanically, unconsciously, that, oh yeah, patience. Yeah, and then we have to, that's immediately followed up with tolerance. And by being tolerant of others in certain behaviors and forcing a patience, we may end up masking a great deal of negativity even within ourselves. And that negativity can grow and fester over time, even under this blanket of patience. So last week, we were talking about that and many other aspects of patience under fire. But today, we're going to be talking about patience understudy. And that's a bit of a double entendre. The word understudy, of course, comes from the theater. And the term refers to a junior actor who is the understudy of the lead performer in any particular role. The purpose of the understudy is twofold. First and foremost, the understudy is there to replace the lead player, the lead actor, should some catastrophe befall them or some illness, and that makes them incapable of going out on stage. Then the understudy takes their place. That's the very practical rubber meets the road purpose for roles to have an understudy. But what might not seem so obvious to anyone who's not in the theater, or to anyone who's not ever apprenticed before, if you have not had the privilege and the honor of serving under a master or a mentor and having that role of an apprentice, an apprenticeship in business. And nowadays they even have what they call internships, right? And in the medical profession, of course, we have medical interns. This is a very, very long and old tradition that spans the globe and all cultures. This notion of apprenticeship. Well, the understudy serves that role in the theatrical realm. The understudy is where the young and inexperienced actors have an opportunity to go through the motions of learning a role, of going through all of the behind the curtain processes of being a lead actor or a main player for the company, for the theatrical company, or among the primary cast of players for that company. But they're still an understudy. They're still just an intern. But that internship gives them the opportunity to wet their feet, as it were. And if that particular theater does things like matinees, Sunday matinees or Saturday afternoon matinees, well, it is very, very unlikely, because of how tasking stepping out on stage for 2.5 or 3 hours, especially if you're doing something, a Shakespearean play. If you're playing Hamlet, well, it's a 4-hour play. You can't do that twice in one day. It is physically, energetically impossible to do that. You would collapse into your first hour of the second performance. Having been on stage myself, I can speak absolutely, testify to this. The amount of energy that is required to give a performance at that level is extraordinary. So if the theater company has a matinee performance and an evening performance, it is the understudy that performs during the matinee. So that's the second role that understudy has. And we are going to be talking about patience. The patience of the understudy. The trials of apprenticeship and what go along with that. And obviously, or perhaps not obviously, as is so often the case when it comes to any of our presentations, any of the topics that we talk about, you know that it's not as simple as that we're not going to be talking about apprenticing woodworkers or apprenticing electricians or plumbers or even medical student interns. We're talking about the role of apprentice to our own innermost master. Because we all have a master. We are all understudies to our higher self, to our true self. And just like last week, we were talking about patience under fire. This week, we're going to be talking about patience under study. Because there is a unique flavor and application of patience when one recognizes and comprehends oneself to be in the role of understudy. The understudy must be patient. The understudy does not get to choose which performances that they will be partaking in. The understudy doesn't get to dictate much of anything. In fact, the way the role is played, the understudy studies the way the lead actor in that role plays the role. And it's not like they're mimicking that actor, but they're going to be doing their performance to fit into the rest of the ensemble the same way that the lead actor does. The understudy can't go in and do whatever the hell he wants. It must all fit into the ensemble, into the vision of the director who weaves the through line through the whole production. Now, Shakespeare said, all the world is a stage, and we are all but poor players, fretting and strutting around the stage. And Shakespeare used that allegory for a reason. And that reason is precisely the comprehension of why we're using this term understudy in relation to apprenticeship and in relation to apprenticing to our own innermost master. And the tremendous patience that is required to be in that position of understudy, of apprentice. And if you have the experience of having been an apprentice, you know this. Because to be an apprentice means, in a very real way, you are not just you're not just a helper. Your mentor, your master, is your teacher. You are there to learn from them as you assist them. And just like the understudy, you are there to step in and take their place in tasks that are either beneath them or tasks that, for whatever reason, they are unable to complete due to age, due to infirmary, due to any number of reasons. And very often, in a workshop environment, the master and the apprentice work together on something. The master literally needs a second set of hands. Or like a surgeon who has a nurse or a second surgeon assisting him in the operation. He needs someone to hand him the scalpel, the forceps, and so on, in order for him to do his craft. So the apprentice serves multiple roles as an apprentice, but the apprentice serves the master with the unwritten, unspoken understanding that he is learning. He is learning by doing. He's learning by watching. He's learning by listening and by doing, which is the best way to learn, is by doing. And when he makes his mistakes, or she makes her mistakes, the master corrects them. And the master shows them the right way to do it. You may be familiar with this this film. Now, this film was way back in the 1980s. I was just a kid when this film first came out. But since then, they've had, remakes, updates. I think the most recent one starred Jackie Chan in the role of well, I don't know if it was Mr. Miyagi. I never watched it. I'm just aware of it, that there is this modern version of it. There's also other versions of it where there was a Karate Kid, and Ralph Macchio's characters, or that role was played by a young girl or a young woman, I should say. So, but if you remember the original, I don't know how, how the sequels or remakes handled it, but in the original, in the Karate Kid, um, Danielson is made to do all these chores around Mr. Miyagi's house. Wax on, wax off. Paint the fence, sand the deck. And all of these different things that he's doing. And sure enough, after days or weeks of this, Danielson, right? He loses patience. He loses patience. And he loses his temper. And he starts yelling at Mr. Miyagi, saying, "You're not teaching me karate. I've just been your slave here for how many days? You're just getting me to do all these chores that you don't want to do. You're not teaching me anything." And then Mr. Miyagi says, "Show me wax on, wax off." And you know the rest. You know how the scene goes. And that whole sequence, that whole element of the story reveals the nature of patience understudy, and how frustrating it can be to be an apprentice to a master, where it seems like all we're doing is having our feet put to the fire, or being used and abused, being exploited, taken advantage of, thrown into hardship after hardship, or endless monotonous repetition. And like Danielson, we lose our patience, and we lash out in anger and frustration. And I don't know if you've felt this and experienced this on your spiritual path, on your spiritual journey. But rest assured that anyone on the path of the Bodhisattva has felt this. The path of suffering and sacrifice for humanity, we feel this all the time. And not only that, we have to contend with time itself. The fact that we're not yet ready, and what's more is, neither is the world. But this phenomena, this archetype of the master and the apprentice, this exists out there in the world. And it is so honored and revered. I don't know how much it is anymore because of modern politics and and modern thinking and all this woke nonsense and postmodernism. But we're talking about a tradition and a way of learning, a way of passing along knowledge, experiential knowledge, from mentor to protege, from master to apprentice, from one generation to the next. This methodology, this relationship, is millennia old, thousands, tens of thousands of years old. And it exists also between masters and students of a spiritual nature. It existed between Jesus and his disciples. And it existed between Buddha and his followers. And that in many cultures around the world to this day, traditions are passed down verbally, generation to generation to generation. And in many religions, including Christianity, Catholicism, for example, there's the tradition of the altar servers. And that tradition is there to get the next generation becoming involved and active in the celebration of the Eucharist and in the celebration of Mass. That's a kind of apprenticeship. That's a kind of understudy. But like anyone who enters into an apprenticeship of any kind, they do so because they're excited and enthusiastic in their youth. They want to do it, right? They want to get their hands on the best tools, and they want to be able to show their mentor and everybody else their skills, their abilities, they want to be able to express themselves. They're full of beans, in other words, full of that youthful enthusiasm, that energy, that vitality, that creativity. And one of the first things that the mentor does is set them to work in some of the most menial tasks that they can find. Sweeping the wood, sweeping the shop floor, taking out the garbage, reorganizing the tools on the shelves, or any number of menial tasks. Just like Mr. Miyagi has Daniel-san performing these menial tasks. What's it all about? Why does the mentor or the master do this with the apprentice? What's the point? Benjamin says, hello. He says, hi, Attlas. And he says, they also even made a Karate Kid game for the Nintendo Switch. Oh, did not know that. I did not know there was a Nintendo Switch game, but there you have it. So the question remains, why does the master, the mentor, subject the apprentice to all this menial stuff? In the case of Mr. Miyagi and Daniel-san, in the context of the film, it's to give Daniel-san a great deal of muscle memory. He doesn't realize that by waxing the cars and painting the fence and so on, he doesn't realize that he's secretly learning karate. He's secretly learning Mr. Miyagi-san's method. He's learning that particular school of karate by performing these repetitive functions over and over and over and over and over again. And that's the first rule of any form of mastery, is that mastery is not built on a foundation of peaks. Right? The pyramid is not made out of capstones. The base of the pyramid is made out of blocks. Sure, the apprentice wants to do all the exciting stuff right away. Wants to get his hands on the tools. He wants to get right in there. But that excitement, that enthusiasm has to be tempered. And it has to be refined and directed and honed and applied in a right and measured way. And the only way to learn that is to recognize that as an apprentice and as an understudy, you have to know your place. All of us have to begin at the bottom. There's no other place to start. If you're climbing a mountain or you're building a pyramid, you cannot build a pyramid starting with the capstone. You can't. It can't be done. That's not how things work. And in accordance with the Alm of Life, right? Each level of the pyramid builds on the foundation of the level that came before it, just like the Alm of Life, that circular process by which all things develop and grow. You can't start building the pyramid on the 40th floor or the skyscraper for that matter. You begin with the foundations, and the foundations must be strong. The foundations must be firm. They must be stable. And the foundations must know their place. Meaning the foundations, for all their strength and stability and reliability and integrity, what matters most is their humility. You might think it's a bit strange talking about the foundations of a building this way. But imagine if the parts of a building had their own personality, and all of a sudden, the foundation decided, I'm sick of this. I want some of the spotlight. I want to be at on the penthouse. What happens to the building? All mastery proceeds according to the Alm of Life, like all growth, like all evolution. So the mentor, the master, has to help the apprentice learn this. And the only way to learn that is by doing it. You cannot know your place because somebody told you that's your place, because people have told that to you before. You know this from your own experience. How do you react to somebody who points a finger in your nose and says, "Know your place"? You know how you react to that. Nobody wants to be put in their place. Nobody wants to be told where they belong, where they are in the pecking order. And as you know, just because somebody told you something doesn't mean you know that. On the contrary, with your mind and your ego reacting as it will, when you're young and you're full of beans and you're full of enthusiasm and you're full of creativity and you're full of passion, I want to be a baker, or I want to be a plumber, or I want to be an electrician, and you want to dive in there and get your feet wet in the deep end of the pool, you don't want to be told, no, 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 you go to the other end of the pool and go into the waiting area and the kiddie area, and you just learn to dog paddle over in the shallow end of the pool. Nobody wants to be told that. And being told that, you just because someone tells you that, you don't know that. Somebody just told you that. Even if you were to believe them, you wouldn't know it. Because knowledge, true knowledge, is self-evident experiential knowledge. It's what we seek. You have to experience that. You have to come to know it the hard way. And listen, many apprentices come to learn that the hard way. You may be familiar with this little the story of the Sorcerer's Apprentice. Now here I am looking for the Mickey Mouse version of it, and I can't find it. All I have is some modern retelling of it. So, oh, there it is. Here we go. So why don't we open image in new tab? There we go. Right? The Sorcerer's Apprentice from Fantasia. And Mickey Mouse. That this iconic fable, this iconic fairy tale of the apprentice who gets too big for his britches. And when the sorcerer is away, he starts casting spells and he starts playing sorcerer, because that's really what he's doing. He's just playing. He's pretending, but he believes, he thinks. He has ambition. He has pride. And of course, catastrophe ensues. Little by little, he makes it worse as he's trying to fix the calamity that he's caused. And the more he tries to use the magic to fix the problems that he's caused, the worse the problems get. He's just magnifying the problems. And it's like the Alm of Life in the reverse, right? It's the downward spiral. The apprentice is not qualified. And he learns the hard way, but very quickly, just how unqualified he is. The other way we can learn, of course, it's a different hard way. And the other hard way is to be humble, to bite the bullet, to eat the sour grapes and go about doing the chores without complaint, without questioning, to sweep the floors, to take out the garbage, and so on and so forth. And one day, out of the blue, the master will say, "Come over here for a minute. I need your help with something." And you'll put down your broom or you'll put down your mop, and you go over to where the master's standing, and he'll say, you see what I'm doing here? I'm doing this and this and this and that. Now I need you to put your hand here and hold it, right? Now you got to hold it tight. Okay? I need your hands. I need your help to do what I'm doing here. Now, do you see why I'm doing it this way? Just one day out of the blue. Or he'll be working on something and he'll say, I need you to go and fetch me that tool over there that's hanging on the wall. And you'll go and you'll grab it, and you'll take it over, and he says, no, not this one, the other one. And he'll say, this one has a serrated edge. We use that for this kind of wood. But the tool that I need has the straight edge, and we use it for that kind of wood because I'm doing this thing with the wood, not that thing with the wood. And slowly by slowly, because the master has seen your integrity, your patience, your willingness to work at the foundational level, and he sees that within you is this strong foundation, this commitment, this integrity, this humility to begin at the bottom, that now he'll come and say, into this foundation, I'm going to put a peg. In that interaction with the tool, or put your hand here, help me out, I need a pair of hands. All of a sudden, that's the first peg, that's the first part of the frame, the structure that's built on top of that strong foundation. But that foundation of integrity, of humility, of strength, of perseverance, of stamina, to be willing to do what must be done. Someone's got to do it. Do you expect your master, your mentor, to sweep the floor and take out the garbage and bring in the heavy supplies and unload the trucks? He might be in his, your master, they might be in their 50s, their 60s, their 70s even. That's not the work of a master. That's why the master has apprentices. And one day, the apprentice will be the master. That's the deal. That's the deal. In Japan, the word sensei literally means he that walked before, or they who walked before. Just means that they're a little bit further down the path than you are. And it's that patience that makes all of that possible. And from The Sorcerer's Apprentice to countless movies that you've seen, cowboy movies or movies about war, First World War, Second World War, Vietnam, whatever, doesn't matter. There's often a storyline where a young man, a young boy, barely on the cusp, right? Just on the edge of being a man, between being a boy and a man. And he's full of beans. And he wants to go to war too, because he wants to prove himself, and he wants to show that he's a man, and he doesn't want to be left out, right? What's that expression that people have, they use nowadays all the time? It's FOMO, right? FOMO. And yeah, I'll just put it in the comments here. FOMO. And this is a common thing on the internet, right? It's a big thing. And it stands for fear of missing out. Well, that particular fear has been around for millennia. And young men have been lying on draft cards since the Civil War. It's one of the side plots in the movie Lincoln, that Lincoln had a young son who wanted to go off and fight for his country. And Lincoln wouldn't let it happen, right? Lincoln made sure to station him in a place where he'd be safe. But this fear of missing out, this has been around for a long, long time. And it's precisely the same urge, the same desire that the young apprentice feels when they step over the line, when they step into a pair of shoes that are way too big for them. And then they learn very quickly how unprepared they are and how unqualified they are to fill those shoes, and that's the sorcerer's apprentice. And if all of that is true for mortals and, plumbers and electricians and carpenters and, woodworkers and painters and sculptors and stonemasons, and it goes on and on and on and on and on. This world has functioned and ran upon the pillars of the master-apprentice relationship for millennia. And if it's so crucial and so fundamental, these dynamics that I've been talking about here in the corporeal world between master and apprentice, between mentor and protege, imagine how much more acute and intense and critical all of these issues are in relation to ourselves and our innermost master. Do you know how many people there are? I encountered one this afternoon on Facebook. And some of you may have even been privy to some of the exchanges that were going on there. But do you know how many people there are who are dabbling in all kinds of sorcery, all kinds of magic, not realizing that they are fulfilling the archetype of the sorcerer's apprentice? Because the magic that they're partaking in is black magic. And what they think they're doing is white magic. What they think they're doing is transmutation. And what they're actually doing is turning themselves into a bona fide demon by virtue of how they've been convinced about what they're doing. And there are literally thousands of books on New Age bookstore shelves that were written by people who channeled. And I've talked about channeling in the past. And how does a demon convince you to let them possess you in order to be able to channel their message through you to the world? It's simple. They appear to you as an angel, and they tell you how important and how necessary you are, and how that you've been chosen. I am the Archangel Michael, and I have chosen you to be my channel, to be my messenger, to spread my message to the world. And this, okay, this FOMO, this fear of missing out, this desire that every apprentice has. Ooh, I get to work with the tools. I get to work with the big man. I get to be an essential part of the team. I've been recognized, and my worth and my talents have finally been recognized. It's like the young man who wants to go to war. And his father says, no, 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 I want you to go home and take care of your sisters and your mother until I get back. And on his way back home, he gets sidelined by a privateer, by some mercenaries who say, hey, you don't have to listen to your pop, and you don't have to work for the actual army. You can come work for us. We're privateers. We're mercenaries. And we do this do this guerrilla warfare stuff. That'll make you a real man. That's an example. Because the Black Lodge will exploit FOMO. The Black Lodge will exploit the fact that we are all just apprentices. We are mortals. We are vehicles. We are vessels. Nothing more. And we cannot ever be anything more. That's the difference between a worldly vessel, I should say a worldly apprentice, right? The mentor-protege relationship out there, the protege can grow up and eventually take the place of the mentor. The protege, the apprentice, can grow up and become the master someday. But you and I can never become the master. We will never replace the master. What we have to do is merge and become one with the master. But in order for us to rise to that level, everything that makes us a mere apprentice must be dissolved, must be removed. We must keep sweeping the floor of the temple, of our temple, until it is so pure and clean and devoid of all impurities and devoid of all obstructions, devoid of all negative entities, so that finally, at last, the light, the God, the Word can come and enter into that temple and make use of that temple the way it was intended, as a vessel, as a vehicle. You can think of it in terms of, if you have a dirty glass, you don't put down a dirty glass in front of your guest and pour your best wine into a dirty glass. You would never do that. And if you're particularly A-type in your personality, you may have hosted dinner parties or some such, and as you're putting out the silverware, you might find, water spots on the silverware. And then you find that spot and you take your shirt sleeve or a napkin and you start rubbing it until you get rid of that water spot. But then you find another one and another one. And before you know it, you're wiping all the silverware down and you're buffing and polishing all of the silverware, one by one by hand, because you can't bear the thought of your guests arriving and eating with what appears to be dirty utensils. They're not dirty. They're clean. They're washed. They're water spots. It happens. And yet, we will go to all that trouble just for our guests who are coming into our home. So how about our Lord, our God, coming into our temple? You see how the whole dynamic of today's talk is playing out? Is that whether it's Karate Kid or your own experience of being an apprentice, or your own fear of missing out, of having to sit at home as a child and watch older brothers and sisters get to go off and partake in activities that you are too young to participate in, right? or you're too short to participate in. Like when you go to the fair or the amusement park as a child, and you have older brothers and sisters, and they get to go on these roller coasters that you can't go on because you have to be this, at least this high, at least this tall, right? To be able to go on the big loop-de-loop roller coasters or whatever. And you know how that made you feel as a child. Or when you had a tricycle, but your older brother or sister had a bicycle, and you could watch them riding down up and down the street, or at least in Gen X anyway, that was what we were doing with very little adult supervision. And we were jumping off boards, and right, we had BMXs, and we were doing all these jumping and everything. And then the little kids with their tricycles, they were just in awe of what they were doing. But boy, oh boy, oh boy, did those kids with their big wheels and their tricycles try to set up their ramps and try to do what we were doing on our BMX bikes, right? Because of the fear of missing out, because we're never satisfied with what we have or at the level that we're at and what we're stuck with, right? This tricycle that we're on. It's just the nature of ego that it wants to, it wants to get to the finish line right away. It wants instant gratification. And it's just like, I hate to say it, it's monkey see, monkey do. That's why even child psychologists will tell you, kids don't learn from what you tell them. Kids learn from how you behave. They learn from your example. So you can tell your kid all you want that they shouldn't drink and that they shouldn't smoke and that they should behave this way and that way. But then if you turn around and light up a cigarette and pour yourself a big glass of whiskey, well, I'm sorry, but you think the kid is going to incorporate what you told them and ignore what you're doing? This is the whole nature of how we really truly learn, is experiential knowledge. And the parent-child relationship is the universal apprenticeship. It's the universal understudy. Everybody has experienced that. Even those people who have lost parents and they've been raised by foster parents or by grandparents or an older brother or sister. It doesn't matter. All of us, when we were children, had someone or something that we looked up to who was responsible for us in one way, shape, or form, even if it was the state, even if it was a boarding school, or what do you call it, or an orphanage. It doesn't matter. All of us have been there at least at some point in our life. And it's important to recognize and comprehend all the times that we were impatient. We wanted to do things right away. We forgot that you have to crawl before you walk, before you run, before you sprint, before you fly. Right? We are not sparrows. And we are not dolphins that are born and are swimming around within seconds of being born. That's not what human beings are like. We have a long and arduous road, a long and arduous path. And that's just maturing as people. It's just maturing as mortals. Just to become an adult, or just to become a plumber or an electrician. How many years of apprenticeship? or to become a doctor, right? And then 4 years of interning, and then being a junior physician, and then uh, a middling physician, and so on. And then if you want to specialize or become a surgeon, then it's more practice, it's more internship, it's more waiting, it's more patience as we grow and develop, and as we lose or we temper that energy and enthusiasm and excitement. We temper it. There's an expression that says, the flame that burns twice as bright burns half as long. But in the game of mastery, we don't want to burn out. Mastery is not about burning out. Mastery is about becoming like that hot coal that burns slow and steady till the end of your days. Through thick and thin, that reliable, the constancy. We say, consistency, but the constancy of the heat, the slow burn. This is what the fairy tale of the tortoise and the hare is about. Slow and steady wins the race. That's mastery. And that slow and steady pace requires patience. And it is the patience of the understudy. Your time will come. You might have the fear of missing out now, but if you overstep your bounds, you're going to end up as the sorcerer's apprentice. Your fear of missing out is going to get you a whole lot more than what you bargained for, and it's not going to be good. You're not going to be ready for it. And that's why so many people are engaged in black magic, and they believe that they're magicians, that they're sorcerers, that they're spiritual people. They believe that they're in 5D ascension because they're doing all of this stuff in the etheric realm and the astral realm. And it doesn't matter, you ask them and say, well, okay, that's all well and good, but are you awake in the 6th dimension? You can always tell when you're dealing with a sorcerer's apprentice, because unlike the Walt Disney cartoon, right, or the fairy tale, they might not immediately, and especially if you're dealing with them online, they might not immediately be surrounded by a flooding workshop with thousands of animated broomsticks carrying water right from the well and dumping it right. You know what I mean? Like if you remember the cartoon, it might not become immediately apparent to you based on externalities that their life is a raging dumpster fire, that they've essentially lit the alchemical laboratory of their existential self and their psyche on fire, and that the whole thing is a burning dumpster, on the highway to hell. That might not become immediately apparent to you. But if you listen to them, and if you listen to how they speak or how they type, the words their choice of words, and how they use them. Very quickly, you will be able to discern an immaturity there. That whatever it is they believe that they're doing, or they think, whatever it is they think of themselves, you know that it hasn't been earned. They do not have any respect. They do not treat the magic that they claim to be performing with the respect that it deserves. And their actions will be as reckless as their speech. And you have known many people in your life who have earned your respect. Individuals of age, individuals of skill, individuals of mastery, of whatever they set themselves and committed themselves to as a life's work. And you know how those individuals speak, particularly of their craft, of their vocation. And you know that these individuals command respect because of the respect that they show their vocation. The respect that they show those who came before them, their masters, their mentors, the ones who taught them, the ones who mentored them. And the respect that they show that their tools and their workshop. And the respect that they exude in their actions, and perhaps most tellingly, with their speech, with their words. And the greater the work, the greater the mastery, the greater the gravitas, and the respect that they not only show their contemporaries and their forebears, but also to you, the customer, the client, just any old person, but also the potential apprentice, the potential protege. That doesn't mean that they don't have a sense of humor about things. That doesn't mean that they take themselves too seriously. But what they aren't is they are not immature and they are not reckless. They command respect with the respect that they show, with the respect that they demonstrate, and with the dignity with which they employ the tools that they have at their disposal, and that includes speech. Reckless speech is one of the great tells. It's one of the great red flags that you have whenever you're dealing with someone. When they are just outright reckless with their words. And if you're dealing with someone who's purporting themselves and presenting themselves to be doing some great spiritual work, some profound magic of this, that, or the other thing, now just listen to how they speak about that. Tiffany says, "Hi, Attlas. Insightful discussion for sure. Question: how can one tell they are practicing black magic, especially when they say it's white?" Well, if we're talking about the easiest way, okay, is, and usually they'll volunteer this, but if we're talking about Tantra, then it'll come down to the question of orgasm. And there are, discernment is always a challenge, and it's something that we have to cultivate. But discernment comes from within. Your higher self will tell you. Because sometimes you'll run across somebody and you don't really know that they're doing. Like if you don't know that channeling is a crime, how could you know that they're partaking in a crime if you don't know that? You could try to work it out for yourself. Well, what is channeling? What does that mean exactly? How does it work? And when you understand that how channeling works and how automatic writing works, is that an entity possesses you, takes you over, and uses you to say and do what it wants you to do. Hopefully, intuitively, you get a sense of, okay, there's something not right about that. There's something wrong about that. That just doesn't feel right. And again, coming back to this thing about speech, how they talk to you and how they talk about what they do. There might be the sense of, okay, there's just something off. There's not something not right. And here's where it really gets keyed in, is when you challenge them on it. If you question what they're doing, and if you say, well, you know, that what you're describing there, that doesn't sound like white magic to me. We have to be careful, because if they are consciously trying to deceive you, they will be much, much more clever and subtle, and they will be far less likely to react if you challenge them. But if they themselves are being deceived, meaning they aren't consciously trying to deceive you, they honestly and truly believe what they're doing is white magic, but it's clearly black magic, and you call them out on it, they will react. Because what is possessing them and what is hypnotizing them and causing them to believe what they're doing is white magic, that thing in the background has to protect its stranglehold over the psyche of the host that they're exploiting, because it's a parasite, right? So they can't give an inch. They can't let that person, they cannot be allowed to entertain the possibility that what they're doing isn't really what they think it is, right? So this is where cognitive dissonance comes in, because cognitive dissonance is fear and control. Well, fear and control is something that is trying to control the person. So the cognitive dissonance is there as a defense mechanism, not for the person, but for the demon, for the ego that is controlling them, that has created the belief that they are using to control that individual. So when the belief comes under fire, the entity, the parasite, has no other recourse of action but to lash out against the person who's questioning the belief. And that is a clear sign that the person is possessed. If they lash out at you when you question what they're saying, when they say, oh no, it's what I'm doing, I'm a master of white magic, or I'm doing this, or I'm doing that, and I do this and I do that, and they'll say I orgasm, and right when the energy comes out, I take it and I reabsorb it and I recirculate it and I retransmute it. Well, they're doing that's black tantra. And once the energy gets released from the body through the orgasm, you have to understand that that's being completely filtered by lust. And now all the light has been absorbed out of it and has been consumed by the lust that subjected the sexual force to its desire. Because remember, in the yin and yang, right, of the Tao, the darkness is there to absorb and hoard the light. Once you've fed it to lust in that way, what lust spits out, okay, is completely negatively charged. It is its metaphysical poop, and it is completely devoid of light at that point. You cannot transmute that back into light. There's no light in it to be transmuted. It is completely negatively charged. And if you reabsorb it, you are what you eat. But try explaining this to somebody who does this practice, or who are convinced that they can orgasm all they want and still transmute the sexual force. And if they're completely convinced that they're doing white tantra, that they're doing tantra the right way, right? And you challenge them on it, they're going to lash out at you. And it's not them lashing out at you. It's the lust. And it's the fear that's in control of them, that's possessing them, that's lashing out at you because they can't afford having the contrary thought or the truth. They can't afford to let the truth get in there. So the best defense is a good offense. So that's a very good, an answer to this question. That, generally speaking, is another one of those tells that you can have. Challenge them on it, or ask them to elaborate on it, or what have you. And in most cases of spiritual practice, when people are talking about what they do and they say, I, they never mention their higher self. They never mention their innermost. They never mention their divine mother with humility, with respect. In other words, they never speak as an apprentice. They speak to you as the master. That's another huge red flag. Because even given, right, how far I've come in my journey and where I'm at in my journey, and I'm still waiting. I'm still apprenticing. I'm still just the understudy. And I freely admit that. It's just that I've been an understudy for a long time now. But as this afternoon made clear, I'm still not ready for prime time, or, and also the world's not ready for the play that, the performance that I'm here to give, to not mix metaphors. It's my character really does come onto the scene, at the end of Act 2, right? When everything has gone to hell. And it's not until everything goes to hell that people are willing to listen. And even then, a lot of them won't listen. I have no illusions. I keep reminding myself, the world keeps reminding me that I have to stop being surprised when people do not receive with open arms the truth. No matter how I present it, and no matter how much I sugarcoat it or present it in the most neutral, innocuous, obvious, self-evident, common sense, down to earth, practical, stripped away of all religiosity, stripped away of all subjectivity, just trying to present it in the most unoffensive, neutral way possible. And still people find a way to be offended. I have to stop being surprised by that. And I have to stop expecting success. And that's part of the understudy process. That's part of the apprenticeship process that I'm still going through after so many decades. That there's a different version of FOMO. There's another version of this. And, this is obviously not something that I know of, whether it's a real thing or not. I don't think this is a real thing. I think this is just something that just, if FOMO is fear of missing out, FOBLO is fear of being left out. It's obviously related, right? It's obviously related to that. But this is really fear of rejection and fear of what other people think and fear of being left behind. So, right, it's obviously in the same category, in the same camp as fear of missing out, but it's slightly different. The fear of rejection, the fear of, it's when you've put your heart and soul into something and then you put it out there and then you get crickets. As a good friend of mine who's an artist and a designer, we were speaking about this on Saturday, actually. It's one of the reasons why I was inspired, or to make this today's talk, because an artist or any creative pours their blood, sweat, and tears into something, and then they put it out there in the world. And an artist doesn't go to all that trouble for no reason. It's like a parent birthing a child into the world. You want to see your child grow up and be successful. Otherwise, why did you have kids? And it's the same thing with an artist. An artist brings something into the world, and especially if that's divinely inspired, if it's they're so passionate about it and they had to bring it into the world, and it's like it was their, they were told to do so by their innermost, and it's all like this miraculous inspirational process of creation, and they finally have the finished artifact, and they put it out in the world, and nothing, crickets. It's a different kind of fear of missing out. It's a different kind of letdown. It's the feeling of being ignored. It's the feeling of it's kind of, there's like a fear of it's like a fear of failure. There's a feeling of failure there, that you let down your innermost. You were given this task by your master, and you put all of your knowledge and all of your experience and all of your learning and all of your skill and all of your passion and energy and creativity into that task, and you fulfilled it to the best of your ability, and you put it out in the world, and nobody cares. And you assume that your master gave you that task for the purpose of it being successful. And when it isn't successful, when it falls flat, and when all you get is crickets, you can't help but feel like you let down your muse, your divine mother, the master, that you failed him somehow, because what you created was a flop. And boy, oh boy, my artist friend said to me, he said, what you must be going through right now, having basically spent the last 2 years of your life and the last 15 years of your life, but the last, culminating in the last 2 years of your life, of your book, and now this campaign for Human 3.0, and it seems to be falling flat and not getting any traction. And he says, what you're going through now, the scale and scope of that feeling that you must be feeling right now, he says to me, he says, I can't even imagine that. No artist can imagine what you're going through right now. And I can't speak to that, to be honest with you, because I'm not an artist, and I haven't done a painting, or, I mean, I did put out a book last year and the book went nowhere, right? So I do have a feeling about that, but it's so on one level, I was telling him, I said, well, for really, I don't really see it in those terms though, because why? Because I've been on the alm of life for decades, and year after year after year after year, I've thrown myself into some project, into some enterprise that was assigned to me by my innermost to pour my heart and soul and everything into. And it's been one failure after another, after another, after another, after another. And each and every one of those have been stepping stones to the next level, but the next level never goes anywhere, never achieves any worldly success. So this feeling of being, the sorcerer's apprentice, and being patient, and being patient, not just with your innermost master, but also with yourself and the world, and having to be okay with it, that we do things without being attached to the outcome. Now, that's easier said than done. But all of this falls into what we're talking about today, and is in no small part why we're talking about this today. It's patience understudy. It's a kind of patience that has to endure for decades before the apprentice can call himself master. Tiffany says, it can be very trying to balance what it is we have to do to deliver a message to the masses, in contrast to what actually gets out to the masses. She goes, I feel you. And she gives what looks like 3 chickens, or 3 unicorns, or 3 rams, or I don't know. It's 3 something. They're too far away for me to tell. And Tiffany says, all divine energy given and no one sees. Why would that happen? She says, P.S., it's not a flop. I get it, but it's not the message, my brother. And Benjamin says, your book, videos, and other works are poised to lay a strong foundation for future success. The only piece left is reaching the right audience for maximum impact. So, of course, you're all correct. And, I'm not on here saying all this because I want your sympathy, or I'm not here sobbing, telling you my sob story, feeling sorry for myself. I'm sharing all of this with you because, of course, this is just another stepping stone. This is just another revolution of the alm of life. And remember what I said about the difference between corporeal apprenticeship and metaphysical apprenticeship is that in order to achieve union, we have to get rid of, we have to clear out, we have to make room and clear out and clean the vessel, right? Clean the glass before you pour your best wine into it. So the last vestiges of identification and attachment, of ego attachment to worldly success, has to go. And that's what this process is facilitating and helping make a reality. Because one of the things that I was meditating upon very recently was selflessness. And I keep returning to selflessness. And it seems to be the only answer. And for me, now I hate the expression, my truth. I hate it. I despise it because of the subjective nature of it. And it allows the ego to freaking run off on all hell's half acres, making up all kinds of garbage, saying, it's my truth, it's my truth, it's my truth. You must honor and respect my truth. Okay, no, there's the truth. Well, the truth is that I'm on the path of the Bodhisattva. The truth is, the work that I'm here to do, I'm not qualified to do it. No mortal is qualified to do the work that I'm here to do. There is a degree of that work, right, that the apprentice can do, or that the master and the apprentice work together in that way, that they're still separated somewhat. But there comes a time in the path of the Bodhisattva where the apprentice dies, and what is reborn in his place is the Christ. And the master of masters, in other words. And for me, it's becoming clear that the challenges that I face them because it is selflessness and selflessness alone that can overcome them. And if I say this to anybody else who is not on the path of the Bodhisattva, they resist. And they say, no, you're too hard on yourself, or you still have to make a living and you still have to live in this world and blah, blah, blah. And all come the excuses and the rationalizations and blah, 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 blah. Because it's not their truth, right? They're not on the path of the Bodhisattva. They don't have to die. They can achieve mastery, okay, but they don't have to go through the second mountain, right, of death and resurrection. But it seems as though I do. And it is very possible that, I'm just waiting around at this point to die. It's very possible that I won't really get to do, obviously, I'm not going to be able to do the work of the Master of Masters. I will never be able to do that work. I'm not qualified to do that work. No mortal is qualified to do that work. And that's why I keep coming back to selflessness. I keep coming back to the nature of true mastery. The true master is focused entirely on his apprentice and on his master work. The true master is completely selfless. That is the mark of a master. You know the work of a master because they have left nothing on the table. When you look at the Mona Lisa, you know that Leonardo da Vinci held back nothing. Or you look at the Sistine Chapel, or you look at David, or you listen to Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, and you know that you can know Beethoven, the soul of Beethoven, you can know through his work, because all of it, the whole of his being, is in his work. The true master holds back nothing for himself because the true master is selfless. There's no basis on which to hold back, to keep in reserve, to preserve. This is what, if you are not on the path of the Bodhisattva, you cannot understand, you cannot comprehend, because your mind won't let you. Your mind will say, but that's ridiculous, that's impractical, I still have to be able to live, and da-da-da-da, right? Because you're not on the path of the Bodhisattva. In other words, you're right. You're right. For everybody else, you have to be infinitely practical, and you have to realize that you're immortal living in the world. And you have to have those concerns. But to a Bodhisattva, it's the opposite. The Bodhisattva can't allow himself to fall into that trap. Can't allow myself to be rationalized and talked into how, yeah, but you gotta squirrel away a little bit for yourself. No, because the Christ is selflessness. You cannot incarnate selflessness and hold on to and squirrel away a little part of for yourself. And I'm saying this, describing this, because we're talking about patience. And we're talking about patience under study. And we're talking about what it takes to elevate oneself to the level of mastery. And Tiffany asked earlier, how one can tell they are practicing black magic, especially when they say it's white. Who are they in it for? If nothing else, Tiffany, try to discern, who are they in it for? Why do they do the magic? Who are they doing the magic for? And remember that black magicians can heal the sick, they can perform miracles, all sorts of so-called good things. But really feel into the words that they're saying and their attitude and so on. Who are they really doing the magic for? And when you learn, for instance, as the fellow who I was locking horns with this afternoon, he said, "Oh, for the mother, for the nature magic, for the earth mother," and he was equating the earth mother to Kundalini, the sexual force. But all of his work is on the fourth and fifth dimensions, and he's eating negative entities, and he's consuming them and eating negative entities. And he believes he's transmuting that energy, and he's transmuting, and he's sending that energy into Mother Earth, Mother Gaia, and Earth magic. And he's talking about he's been doing it for lifetimes, and so on and so forth, and everything else. So who's he doing it for? He's doing it for mechanical nature. He's doing it from mechanical nature. He admitted it. And not only did he admit it, he was reveling in it. And he was so proud of his contribution. And he was so proud of his identity as being part of this ancient pagan sect of sexual fire magic. And he was hurling insults and at me, at my quote religiosity and all the other things, and that all the books that I had read and so on and so forth. It's God, Christ, love, selfless. Selfless. Yeah, Peter Donnelly says there was no humility there. Which brings us right back to where we began in today's talk, right? And why poor Daniel-san was put through all the chores, right? First thing, right? Because Miyagi-san had to teach Daniel-san humility. I'm going to be arming you with a weapon. Do you know what happens to people who do not respect and do not honor the magnitude, the severity, the power of a weapon that is put into their hands? We all know what happens to those people who play around with guns like they're toys. We all know what happens to them. Either themselves or someone they love or someone they care for ends up shot and killed. That's what happens. Because they had no respect for the power that they were wielding like drunken high school children, like drunken sailors, or like drunken cowboys. You see the recklessness, that recklessness of speech, that recklessness of ego, that recklessness that translates into recklessness of thought and recklessness of action. Humility goes hand in hand with patience. The respect that the sorcerer's apprentice doesn't have for the power that he wants to wield to make his life easier, to get the brooms to do his work for him, and get the brooms to carry the water for him. Because he has no humility. He wants to be like the sorcerer. He wants to have his own servants. He wants to have an army of servants. Benjamin says, I read that today on Facebook. Yeah, the guy was proud. Yeah. And here's the thing, the difference between a real faith healer and someone who's doing essentially black magic. A true faith healer knows that they don't do the healing. A true healer appeals to the masters of medicine. Master Hippocrates, the Archangel Raphael, Hermes Trismegistus, or the Archangel Michael. They will have a relationship to these angelic beings, and they will pray to the masters of medicine that if that person is worthy, and if it's not too much trouble to ask, would you be so kind as to bless them with some healing? Because they have come to me with that need. That's how a true healer works. No mortal who's working with white magic has the conceit to believe that I'm the one doing the healing. In the same way that my mortal vessel, Attila, doesn't have the conceit here to believe that I, Attila, am the one who's speaking these words. I'm speaking these words, but they're coming through me, not from me. Which is why I refer to myself most often these days as Attlas. So when the person is going, I, and they don't make it clear whose voice they're speaking with, you know something is awry, something is not, because even Moses or Jesus, how often would you hear them use the expressions, my Father in heaven? And Moses specifically has his brother Aaron perform the miracles. Moses gives his staff to Aaron and says, Aaron, throw my staff on the ground. And the staff turns into a serpent and eats the Pharaoh's serpents, right? All of these little clues, all of these little hints are there so that even the prophets and the great masters and the great avatars were, and those who were documenting and trying to write down and express their lives and their miracles were trying to do so in a way that would communicate and get across the fact that it's not the mortal guy there that's doing anything. Okay? We're meat sacks. We are meat sacks. We are characters in a video game. We're pixels, okay, in a video game. And we have this AI, artificial intelligence computer up here, and we have another one in our heart and in our central nervous system. We have another one in our body. We have 3 brains. The mind is the slowest one, the heart is the second fastest, and the body is the fastest. What they call the lizard brain, the motor instinctive sexual center. We've talked about it before, and you can all do a test on this. You ever gotten bad news? Somebody died? Where do you feel it first? Boom, punched in the gut. Why? Because your heart comprehends it first, your emotional center. Or when someone breaks your heart, your mind is still trying to process the words that they said, but your heart is already broken. Sometimes your heart is already breaking when the phone starts ringing. The person's about to break up with you on the phone, and 2 rings, and boom, you start feeling your heart breaking. You haven't even heard what they have to say yet, but your emotional center has already processed it. Right? You watch the guys doing the 360s on the BMX bikes and on the motocross bikes and stuff, and they're jumping off these ramps and they're doing these incredible feats. You think any of those people are thinking about what they're doing? You think they're working out all the angles and all the and all the and that this all these calculations are going on in their head? No, they'd all be dead. They would all be dead. It is the brain in their body. It's thousands of times, tens of thousands of times faster than the mind. How quickly your reflexes are, for example. Right? You hit your funny bone, your entire body is spazzing out even before you realize what the hell just happened. Right? By the time your brain processes, oh shit, I shouldn't have hit my funny bone there, your body is already getting over it. Only then the pain is finally getting to your head, but your body is already recovering from it. And people think that this meat sack and this rational, intellectual, binary, mechanical mind is qualified to do miracles and to use magic and so on and so forth. Yeah, it's what Peter says here. It's what Benjamin said here. There's no humility there. But that's why ego and pride are synonymous. That's how people use that word. Ego means I. That's all it means. I. I. Tiffany says, so from a bodhisattva standpoint, the individual that you were describing earlier, how would one even handle someone like that? Well, Benjamin will tell you that the way I was attempting to handle them did not go over very well with others. And I was the one being criticized, and I was the one being attacked for being judgmental and condemning, and I was condemned of all sorts of things. And I found myself having to respond to individuals who were turning around and then speaking to him, validating him, apologizing to him for my behavior, for the way I was treating him, that I was treating him with disrespect, and I wasn't hearing him, and I wasn't this and that and the other thing. They were basically stroking his ego and validating his demon, the demon that was possessing him. And that made it impossible for me to actually help him. The more I tried to help him, the more I tried to explain myself to these people why I was using the approach I was using, it didn't matter, because it was all in a public forum and he had access to everything. And he was just reveling in it. He was having a joyous, great old time watching someone on the path of the Bodhisattva who has suffered and still suffers from demonic possession himself being cut off at the knees and sabotaged by all of these Christians who who want to give space for everybody and their path. And everybody walks a different path, and everybody has a different perspective, and everybody's spiritual perspective has to be allowed and has to be accommodated for, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this guy's demon he was lapping it up. He was eating these people alive, and they didn't realize it. They were completely oblivious to that fact. They thought they were being kind and compassionate and empathetic, and right, and their patience, right? Remember last week when I was talking about how when patience is no longer a virtue, when patience starts showing tolerance for things that should not be tolerated, or at the very least need to be transmuted. They need to be called out for what they are. They need to be comprehended for what they are. When patience covers that all up with a soft, comfy comforter, with a blanket, that makes everybody feel so warm and fuzzy inside. Yeah, but this guy, they basically condemned him to hell. Nobody was helping him. The only one trying to help him, honestly and truthfully, out of genuine empathy, because I know what it's like to be possessed by a demon. I know what it's like to be ignorant of that. And I know that what it's like, where he's coming from and what he's doing and what he's going through. Nobody else in the group knows. And yet they all attacked me for being firm and direct with him and sharing and speaking to him in a way that he would know that I wasn't naive and that I couldn't be walked all over like a doormat. The way that you have to deal with demons. Otherwise, they walk all over you like a doormat. You can't be soft with them. Now, some people, obviously, there's a time to be gentle. There's a time to be soft. There's a time to be right. But this was not that time or place. But because certain individuals, and because all of humanity in the West has been poisoned by these what do you call it? The dogma of trauma and the dogma of kindness and the dogma of this and the dogma of that, they throw 50% of love out the window, which is severity. Love is not only mercy. Love is not only compassion. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do to someone is smack them across the face and smack the crack pipe out of their hands. Sometimes that's the most compassionate thing you can do for someone in the moment. But someone who's ignorant, walking in from outside, and all they see is you smacking a crack pipe out of the person's face, and they run over and they go, oh my God, I have a good lawyer. Don't worry. We're going to charge this guy with assault. That's what happened. And that's why people like Jesus get crucified. Because no one is, and that's why people like Socrates gets poisoned by the people of Athens. Poisoned by the mob or crucified by the mob, because it was the mob that demanded Jesus be crucified. Pilate even asked them, look, we got this murderer here called Barabbas. Who do you want us to crucify? Jesus or Barabbas? I give you, the people, the choice. And the people said, no, no, let the bloodthirsty killer out. Let Barabbas, the killer, go. We want Jesus crucified. We want the guy who speaks the truth. We want him crucified. Benjamin Raphael says the apostle of Paul was like that too. He was harsh to rebellious people, full of meaningless talk and deception. Look, some men you just can't reach, right? And some men you will never reach. But the idea that you can contend with an entity of real power and control over someone, the idea that you can contend and stand toe to toe with that entity from a place of weakness, from a place of conciliation, you're going to make peace with the demon? This is so naive that it is beyond stupid. It is beyond naive. It is ignorance at a level that and it's not like judgmental or condemning ignorance. It's just, and it's not passing judgment or condemnation on the person who's possessed by the demon either. The Black Lodge has a purpose. The Black Lodge has a role, like the black pieces on the chessboard. They must be ruthless. And they are ruthless. You cannot play chess by trying to make your pieces make peace with the other player's pieces. This is stupid. It is just flat stupid. It is ignoring the very nature and purpose of the game. This is the very essence of the to be or not to be speech that Hamlet speaks. It's someone who says, I'm going to become strong not by lifting the weights. I'm going to become strong by leaving them alone. I'm not going to trouble those weights. I'm going to leave them alone. I'm going to let them be. That's how I'm going to be strong. That's called delusional thinking. That's what that is. And it's just a fact. Does that mean that you always have to go in with tough love all the time with everybody who's suffering from something? No, of course not. Of course not. Because there's a time to be gentle. There's a time to be kind. There's a time for gentle encouragement. And there's a time to just shut up and listen. But guess what? Nobody gets to see that side of me. Nobody gets to see that side of me. Why? Because I don't trouble myself with people at that level of suffering. Because that's not what I'm here to do. Because they have family, they have friends, they have counselors, they have therapists, they have people that they can turn to who are just going to listen to them. And they can have a bitch session and get all their feelings and emotions out. They don't need that from me. What do they need from me? The people who get nothing from those other people and their kindness and their compassion and their patience and everything else. The people who are not helped by that, they need a firmer, stronger hand. They need what I can give them. But all these smart people who know their way and so on and so forth, they pile on and they come in and they sabotage the process because, hey, kindness is king, right? They have all these memes going around on the internet. It's better to be kind than it is to be right. I know where they're coming from with that meme. But if your 16-year-old is getting in a car after, having a few beers, and you notice that they haven't put their seatbelt on, are you going to be kind or are you going to be right? Which is more important? Which matters? In that scenario, I don't care who you are. If that's your kid, you will jump in front of that car. You will put a hole in the tire if you have to. You will drag your child kicking and screaming out of that car before you let them drive anywhere. And you will be right to do it. Will you be kind? No. But you will be right. And your rightness in that moment will be the kindness act of compassion and love that you can show to that individual who is about to drive to their death potentially out of their stupidity and out of their possession by whatever ego, including the alcohol, alcohol, that was possessing them in that moment and made them think that they were okay to jump in the car and drive. That's a very practical, real world, down to earth scenario. And if anybody has the nerve to point a finger at you who just potentially saved someone's life because you dragged them out of that car, their drunken ass out of that car, and you took the keys and you threw them in the bushes to make damn sure they couldn't get back into that car. And if anybody judges you for that act of love, that act of kindness, that act of compassion, then you know what you're dealing with. You're dealing with a sorry, sad sap who is completely possessed by the dogma of kindness. And they are more concerned about themselves and their own feelings and their own comfort and security and how other people might judge them and how other people might think of them, including the sad, sorry, drunken ass that you dragged out of that car. Oh my God, what is he going to think of me if I stop him from driving? Oh my goodness. You're dealing with ego. You're dealing with mystic pride. So let them judge you, let them condemn you all they want. When you know you're right, you know you're right. It doesn't matter what other people think. It doesn't matter what other people say. And it doesn't matter how other people condemn you and judge you for being right. And it doesn't matter how unkind they see your actions. Because they're blind, they're stupid, and they're naive. And that's a fact. That's a fact. That's not opinion. That's a fact. If they cannot see the love through the severity, all they see is that they're uncomfortable. Oh my goodness. Oh, how dare he? But that's unfortunately the world that we live in, right? And people get canceled for saying the truth, canceling because of speech and all the rest of it. We cannot be afraid of the truth, and we cannot be afraid of speaking the truth, and we cannot be afraid of right action. Right action trumps all. And right action is the term that's used by Buddhism, which of all the religions in this world is the one that's most concerned with compassion. Is it not? Would you not agree with that? Because Buddhism speaks constantly about compassion. Compassion, 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 compassion. And right alongside compassion, the two hands that are put together in prayer, Right alongside of that is right action. There is no kindness greater than being right. Not right for yourself, not right for the sake of being right, right for the sake of right action, for what is right and what is best in that moment for the other individual. That is right action. Right action is selfless, which, if you want to take these two hands and turn them into a triad, a trinity, compassion, right action, and no self. These are the three basic tenets of Buddhism: selflessness, right action, and compassion. If your actions pass those three tests, you're acting selflessly, you're acting right action, and it's pure compassion for the other. Then let them judge you and condemn you all they want, and they will. Rest assured, they will. Tiffany says, wasn't it Jesus that said, coming up against demons, should one slap you, offer them the other cheek? Benjamin, yeah. No, the turn the other cheek is not in reference to demons specifically. It just says when your opponent, when your adversary, or when your enemy slaps you across the cheek, show him the other cheek. But the understanding of this is very superficial and very intellectual for the most part. And this is one of the verses of the Bible that was used by Gandhi, for example, to justify his nonviolent civil disobedience campaign. And I don't know if I want to get into it now, but I write about it in the book, right? I address this, all of this, turn the other cheek and what it really means. And you have to put yourself in the shoes of being slapped. And I don't know, Tiffany, if you remember that episode of Cheers where Diane and Sam are in this slapping contest. But it's one of the videos that is in the book, and it's there's a QR code. This chapter is the chapter on woke, by the way, and that's when I talk about Gandhi and nonviolence and this verse in the Bible. I address it all in that chapter of the book. And then there's a little QR code. You scan it, will take you to the video on YouTube of Sam and Diane slapping each other back and forth. In the comprehension of all of that, then that will become clear what turning the other cheek really means. It's not what people think it is. It's not what people think that it simply means not to slap back, not to react out of ego, in other words, not to do an automatic, mechanical, unconscious reaction to anything, including being slapped. It doesn't mean offer them your other cheek, because that thinking is precisely the kind of passive aggression that Gandhi used to kick England out of India, after which India fell into civil war. Because both sides now, the Hindu majority and the Pakistani minority, now turned to each other. But all they had was the passive aggressive strategy that they learned from Gandhi. And you know how toxic passive aggression is. Can you imagine the hate and the vitriol and all the pent up anger that was unleashed on one another, on these two civil groups? That's why there was never going to be a united India after England left. Britain knew this. Great Britain knew this. But Gandhi was so naive. And the only way that Gandhi could stop the violence after England left, the only way that he could stop the vicious, brutal blood feud between Muslims and Hindus in India was he went on a hunger strike. In other words, he used the same coercive tactics against his own people to get them to fall in line and behave. That's where turn the other cheek gets you when you don't understand what it really means. And when you understand it only on a superficial level, you end up Gandhi on a hunger strike, trying to prevent the people of his country from slaughtering one another in a bloody, brutal civil war. So nothing in life is so black and white and easily, understood on a superficial, literal level. Benjamin says, I think, Tiffany, the context of that is whenever someone attacks our right to respect and dignity, we don't retaliate. We let God do it because he said, it is mine to avenge. Yeah. And Tiffany says, that's it. Thank you. And Benjamin says, that is my own opinion, Tiffany, but the scripture sometimes has a deeper meaning. And Benjamin also says, but rebuking the wrong is also an act of love. Without it, we allow wrongdoing to continue unchecked. Well, since both of you have copies of my book, I'm not going to elaborate any further on this because you've either already read this in my book or you will read it eventually. So we don't have to dwell on that particular topic. But this last comment that Benjamin Raphael said here is that when you're dealing with, one of the things that demons don't like is to be exposed. So when you call them out, when you call someone out on their wrongdoing, if they react or overreact to being called out, it's their demon that's doing that, because the cockroach likes to stay in the shadows, right? When you flick on a light, all the cockroaches scatter, right? The demons are like that. So when you call them out, and people don't like to be called out on their crimes for that very reason. So, but sometimes, like when you're dealing with people who are suffering from anxiety, depression, or addictions, there are many, 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 many cases where you can't go in heavy-handed. You have to be gentle. You have to put on kid gloves, in other words, and treat them a little bit like China dolls, right? Because they're fragile. And this is especially true if someone feels defeated and hopeless, or someone is caught in the downward spiral of self-sabotage and self-loathing. Because if someone is caught on a downward spiral of self-destructive behavior, you are not going to get very far with them by dropping the hammer, because they are way past the point of being able to control their circumstances. They're way past the point of having a handle on their own psychological landscape. So for you to go in and say, drop the hammer and say, buck up, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, and get out there and be a man or whatever, or pull yourself together and and have some willpower and and this and that. Like, this is the worst thing you can do, to somebody who's in a really fragile state. So you have to be kind and gentle and give space for them to open up and come out, and you have to build trust and all sorts of stuff. But that's the work of therapists, and that's the work of friends and family and people who are close to them. It's not for people on the internet to do, generally speaking. But even so, if there's an opportunity to do that, then you're called to do that, and that's what you're called to do. But at the same time, if you approach someone with those kit gloves and you treat them like a China doll, but they're the reverse of being fragile, why are you treating them that way? What are you afraid of? They're not they're not at any risk of taking their own life. They might be caught in self-sabotaging behavior or whatever. But sometimes what they need is some kind of a wake-up call. Sometimes what they need is to have a mirror held up to their face and say, look at that. Look at yourself. Look at what you're doing. Listen to what you're saying. And especially if you know what they're going through. See, because all of this comes down to empathy and understanding. How you approach someone, you're just an apprentice, remember. All of this should come from your innermost. And your innermost will tell you, be gentle, be kind. Take it slow, take it easy. Or your innermost will tell you, okay, be firm, be decisive, be direct, be honest and fair and respectful, but treat them like an adult. Don't pussyfoot around. Don't treat them like a child. Don't patronize them. Don't, whatever. Treat them as an adult. Meet them at the level that they are, not at the level that you want them to be or the level that you're comfortable with. You must be selfless. Selfless. Unfortunately, most people don't know how to be selfless. They have no concept of that. So they will witness what you are doing, meeting somebody at their level, and you're locking horns with them, with a demon at the level that that demon is at. And then these so-called innocent bystanders, they're shocked and they're outraged. Oh my goodness, because they're uncomfortable. And now they're going to swoop in and say, how dare you treat them that way? And you got to make space for everybody. And you got to make space for people. This is in a Christian mystic group. And I have to make space for the demon and the black magic. Just let's be clear. Let's be clear. Jesus didn't make space for anybody who's possessed by demons. He cast the demons out. Jesus didn't treat those people with kid gloves. He did what needed to be done to liberate them and free them from that which was the cause of their suffering. And sometimes, oftentimes, that's a very difficult process to undertake, let alone observe. And then it turns out that one of these individuals is a so-called certified exorcist. Certified, no doubt, by a pastor who's never done an exorcism before. Or they've exercised what they thought they've exercised like let's not even continue and get into it anymore. It's just that this is Tiffany was asking earlier about the Bodhisattva and what the Bodhisattva deals with. This is what the Bodhisattva deals with. The Bodhisattva deals with people who do not understand and will never understand selflessness because they can't get out of their own ego, even when they think that they're being the masters of compassion and kindness. They cannot see that this is what last week's live stream was about. They cannot see that their so-called patience and tolerance and compassion is all wrapped up in their own ego and their own need to feel comfort and security, their own comfort levels. And it is a very, very, very subtle and clever trick of ego. But that's mystic pride. These are the people who are so-called spiritual ones, right? And they run around pointing fingers and getting in the way of people trying to do real work because it makes them uncomfortable. And then they end up validating and promoting and standing on the side of someone who's possessed by a demon. And the demon is rolling on the floor, laughing his ass off, mocking them and mocking God, saying, look at your so-called Christians. Look at how completely useless your doctrine and your dogma, do unto others as you would have others done unto you. Look what your modern Christians have done of that and made of that. Can you believe this clown show? That's what his demon was saying. Now, his demon was mocking me too, but that's because they were attacking me and they were making a mockery of me. So, and it was obvious to me. It was clear. It was crystal clear to me. It was self-evident. But that's because this person even went and got a certification for exorcism that she's not qualified to do. She's not. If this is her approach, those demons eat her alive. And they will eat alive anyone that she's trying to help. If she meets a demon of actual real stature and power. I don't know what kind of entities she was exercising or whatever. Who knows? But this is how deep in hell humanity is. And Benjamin will surely agree. Benjamin Raphael will know the quote from the Bible that talks about the end times as being the times of confusion. That confusion is the defining characteristic of the end times. And I'm here to tell you that there are many, many so-called faithful of many religions and many traditions who are very, very confused indeed. I mean, just look at the gender issue. Look at how that is dominating our politics today. What is a man? What is a woman? No one can seem to decide. If that is not the epitome of confusion on some of the most basic questions, spirituality, mysticism, metaphysics, I mean, good God. So we shouldn't be surprised. Exacerbated sometimes, sure, because I'm still human, but not surprised. Saddened, because I can't help but feel compassion for these people, but not surprised. We can't afford to be surprised anymore. And yet, we've only just begun. It's only just begun. It's not getting any better. God only knows what the states are going to look like after the election. But we have not yet begun to see the depths of depravity and the levels of chaos that all of this confusion has yet to rot in the world. Because the confusion is inside. And it's only just now coming out and manifesting in the world. So there's a hell of a lot more chaos that needs to manifest before all the confusion in here, it gets reflected out there. So don't be surprised when it happens. Tiffany says, this is a Christian mysticism group, and I have to make room for the demon. That's so sad. Yeah, but it's not surprising, right? Because who's making room for the demon? It's the demon's making room for the demon. It's the mystic pride and the fear and the thing that wants comfort and security and doesn't want to rock the boat. That's what wants to make room for the demon. And let's all get along and let's make space for everybody and so on and so forth. Well, okay, I mean, sure. But it's, you know what? If you remember the movie Alien or Aliens, one of the first two, there's, whether it's the company or it's or a representative of the company, like in the second movie, it's Burke. And then there's another version of Alien, I think it's Alien Resurrection, I think it's the fourth movie, where Sigourney Weaver asks one of the scientists, what are you doing? Teaching it to sit, roll over? And the scientist says, well, we're teaching you. And there are always these ignorant idiots. Like the xenomorph is this absolute killing machine. It's this perfect organism. An organism of like perfect death. It's perfectly mechanical. It's biomechanical. It has one of the most ingenious defense mechanisms, right? Acid for blood. And it's like, but one of the running themes in Alien is that there's always people that are trying to like make friends with it, or they're trying to study it, or they're trying to capture it somehow. In other words, their greed or any number of pride, their desire to possess, their desire to control, is compelled by that demon, because the xenomorph is an allegory for a demon. It's a biomechanical monstrosity. And its whole life cycle and everything else. And it's the brilliant design by H.R. Giger. Giger, his whole art, the whole of the body of his artwork was all about revealing the nature of binary mechanical nature. I've expressed this with you before. Giger had this insight into the nature of the subconscious and the nature of the infernal worlds. And he expressed that through these biomechanical monstrosities that was in his artwork. He knew, intuitively, that all of our darkness, all of our shadow self, not the unconscious self, but the subconscious self, was all this biomechanical horror show. But it was biomechanical, right? It wasn't mechanical, he had the foresight and the insight to make it look organic and alive in its mechanicity. Because that is the true nature of mechanical nature. Look at nature. Nature doesn't look like machines. Look at your body. Your body doesn't look like a machine. It doesn't feel like a machine, but your body is a machine. And that was the genius of Geiger. He knew intuitively that he could not adequately express the horrors of mechanicity unless he showed the fusion and the seamless fusion in his artwork of mechanicity and biology. So this biomechanical, these monstrosities, these biomechanical horrors that defined his work. And yet, the vast majority of humanity missed it, went over their head. They didn't get what Giger was doing. They just thought it was cool. It's a cool alien for a sci-fi series, right? But the subtext in those movies is so powerful, especially in the first one. And the fact that the AI goes crazy, right? And all the rest of it. And I even use quotes from Alien in my book, because the android reveals the truth about mechanical nature. And it's right there in black and white in the script. And the android says it, right? The perfect organism. Its structural perfection is matched only by its hostility. And that the AI, which is a pure machine, purely mechanical, a man-made machine, right? Even more mechanical than biomechanical, right? There's no nature in that android. He's a robot. And he admires the xenomorph. Why? Because its structural perfection is matched only by its hostility. Too many people look at nature and all they see is the beauty and the this and the that and the, right? People look at baby hippos. Oh, they're so cute and everything else. They forget that the hippopotamus is the deadliest animal in Africa. Because sentimentality makes us stupid, makes us dumb as hammers. Because something is cute and cuddly and looks like you just want to run up and hug it, it's a killer. The hippopotamus kills more people in Africa than any other animal. It kills more people than shark attacks the world over. Oh, but it's cute and cuddly. And it's slow and dumpy. And hippopotamus can run 35, 40 kilometers an hour, which is way the hell faster than any human can run for more than, maybe 50 meters. Yeah, no human can run that fast, not even 50 meters. Right? An adult hippopotamus can snap a Nile crocodile in half like that. Like you would bite into a Twizzler and chomp it and cut it in half. A hippopotamus can do that to an adult crocodile on the Nile. But it's cute and cuddly. This is how stupid and naive humans can be sometimes. And if we can be that stupid and naive towards something like a hippopotamus, just think how stupid and naive people are when they try to treat demons as cute and cuddly friends that we have to make friends with. Benjamin says, and all the ways that wickedness deceives those who are perishing, they perish because they refuse to love the truth and so be saved. For this reason, God sends them a powerful delusion so that they will believe the lie, and so that all will be condemned who have not believed the truth, but have delighted in wickedness. And, you know, thank you, Benjamin, as always, for stepping in with the biblical quotes. And anyone listening in on this who's not used to, who's coming in from a human 2.0 way of thinking, and say, what, and I talk about the naivete and the delusion of thinking a hippopotamus is cute and cuddly, meaning while it's the deadliest animal in Africa. And Benjamin's quote says, the delusion is a powerful delusion so that they will believe the lie, and that they will be condemned who have not believed the truth, and that they have delighted in wickedness. And people will pipe up, I'm sure, and come out of the woodwork and want to say, naivete is not wickedness. Sentimentality is not wickedness. How can you call that wickedness? Thinking a hippopotamus is cute, how is that wickedness? You have to read the first part of Benjamin's quote. And all the ways that wickedness deceives. If it's a deception, it is wicked. It is wickedness. If you're being deceived, if you're living in naivete, in delusion, in illusion, and you refuse to accept the truth, you're living in wickedness because you're living a lie. And the modus operandi of the Black Lodge, of ego, of mechanicity, is deception, is delusion. Look at your watch. Look at the face of a clock, an analog clock. What do you see? You see a machine that pretends to know the time. Open up that clock. Open up your watch. Look at all the gears happening inside. Understand that that's mechanical nature. What it shows you on the surface and what it pretends to know is a deception. That clock on the wall, we all live slaves to that clock on the wall, do we not? Time doesn't exist. But because the clock on the wall indicates that it does, we all have enslaved ourselves to it. A powerful delusion that we will believe. We all believe that time is real. Physicists, there are tens of thousands of physicists the world over who factor time into their equations. How could they not? And they wonder why they can't comprehend the nature of reality and why they're stuck under that glass ceiling. And someone will say, but that doesn't make them wicked. No, makes them deceived by that which is wicked. Benjamin Ochoa says, I suppose the worship version of cuddly would be the Baal statue. It's a demon, but people thought it was pretty looking. This happens all the time. Idolatry and people worshiping all sorts of idols because they're cute, right? So they make Buddha into the fat, laughing Buddha, right? Because he's cute and cuddly. And then we have all the different idols of Jesus, and right. So idolatry is never a good thing in general. But another one is Krishna as a little boy. Have you seen the baby Krishna? Baby Krishna is a big one. And then there's Oh gosh, the name is eluding me. Ganesha, the elephant god of the Hindus. And I've seen images of him being made very cute and cuddly. So, but yeah, people making cute and cuddly versions of Baal. I mean, but again, that cute and cuddliness. I mean, look, I'm I'm a softie. I'm an empath. I'm a softie at heart. I love cute and cuddly. I'm a sucker for cute, cuddly dogs, for cute and cuddly rodents and rabbits and kittens and you name it, and like ducklings. Who, you know, all of us, if we have a strong feminine side, especially, we can't help but feel that maternal bond and that maternal instinct come over us, and all these feelings and hormones start getting released, all the dopamine and all the serotonin and everything else, just by holding like a baby duckling or like a kitten, right, or a puppy, right? You ever see a puppy come up to you? And a puppy loves everyone. Everyone to a puppy is like the greatest thing ever. And he jumps up at you and he starts licking your face and wagging his tail and stuff. Like, who doesn't love that? Unless they're, hypochondriac or whatever, and they don't want to be touched and they don't want to be licked. But if you're an animal lover, of course, this is just endearing, and just another connection. And it's there's a level of that. Of course, there's nothing wrong with that. But that can be very easily exploited by ego. And it can be taken too far, where, you know, I like bears. And there was a documentary about it was called Grizzly Man. It was made by a very famous documentarian. But it was, a lot of the footage was found footage. It was footage that this fellow Grizzly Man took on his own camera. And he went out into the woods, into the wilds, into Alaska, I believe, to live with the grizzly bears. And that documentary is all about his experiences. Let's just put it that way. Now, I like bears. And yeah, bears look like they would be big and cuddly and all the rest of it. And I'm sure that if I was a bear, that would be the case. But I'm not a bear. And I'm not so foolish and naive to think that a bear is going to find me as cute and cuddly as I think of him. Benjamin Raphael says, unicorns and rainbows, once symbols of innocence and cuteness, have been adopted by certain activist groups, the Alphabet Group, for example, although they have a wicked agenda. You make an excellent point here, Benjamin, because the cross, the swastika, the SS symbol, all of which I've shared with you, are symbols of the Christ. All of them were appropriated by the Germans in the Second World War to be powerful symbols of, they too had a wicked agenda, did they not? So when you talk about the rainbows and the unicorns and those symbols and how they're used by the Alphabet Group, and the appropriation of words like woke. They're woke. They're awake, right? They're enlightened. This is the modus operandi of darkness, right? To absorb and hoard the light. Which means that if there's a symbol of power, they're going to steal it and they're going to use it for themselves. That's why the words faith and belief have both been corrupted to mean mental thinking. That's not what either of those words mean originally. Faith never meant belief, and belief never meant belief. Belief comes from belief, to surrender willfully. To be leaf, in other words, to be loyal, to be a loyal servant, to be loyal in service, to be life. B-L-I-E-F. Be leaf. That's where belief comes from. To serve willingly. To be a loyal servant, to surrender. Just as faith, the only meaning of faith that survives is to be faithful. In other words, we used to say to give faith meant to be able to witness. To witness, in other words, to know intimately. To any of you who have spouses or have had significant others presently or in the past, to be faithful to your spouse is to know them intimately at the exclusion of all others, which is the first commandment, to love your God with all your heart and all your soul, and to have no gods before him. No other gods before him. What are these other gods? These other gods are the egos, the demons, who desire, right? Who desire God from his throne, who we are supposed to believe towards. We are supposed to be life to our innermost. We are supposed to be faithful to our immortal beloved, just as we are faithful to our mortal beloved. And yet, today, belief and faith mean to live in illusion and delusion, to just have a concept in the mind. That's what those words mean. To have faith. That's blind faith and blind belief. Just because someone said so. Just because the Bible says so. Which is fine. There's a place for that. We all have to start somewhere. But the idea that that's going to save you, you think that you can be faithful to God in that way? Is that how you're faithful to your wife? Because you think you are? Is that what it means? Is that enough? Do you think your wife or your husband is going to think that's enough to be faithful, as long as you believe you are, as long as you think you are? Or do you have to believe and willingly submit, willingly give yourself to that bond, to that commitment? and willingly devote yourself to your spouse and to your family, willingly, you do so out of love. You do so because you want to. You do so because it is right action. That is be leif. And that is what it means to be loyal, to be faithful. Last time I checked, people believing some shit and right action, there can be a huge gulf between those two states. And let's face it, there are a whole hell of a lot of Christians who, for example, have nothing to say about the actions of certain people in the Middle East, but they support them 100%. I'm not sure Jesus would support those people and their actions in the Middle East 100%. Now, it doesn't mean that he would support either side, and he wouldn't what do you call it? He wouldn't excuse either side for the violence. But when one side kills 10 people and the other side responds with the rhetoric of, we will kill 100 people for every 10 that they kill, I'm not sure Jesus is going to get behind statements like that and say, yeah, I approve of this message. I don't think if Jesus was around today, he would be picking sides, taking sides, or supporting either side in its promise to escalate the violence. For my part, I feel very strongly that the temple must be rebuilt. But there's only one way that that temple will be rebuilt. And that is as a glowing testimony, a house of true faith, a temple of be leif, and as a physical manifestation of the reconciled triune human being, a house of God that is truly an expression of man as we were made in the image and likeness of God. So the temple will be rebuilt when it is a house of God where all three of the Abrahamic religions may go and worship in peace without any fear and without any animosity toward one another. The temple will be rebuilt when it is rebuilt by Muslims, Jews, and Christians to worship the one God that they all worship, that they all believe in. When those three can be one, then the temple can be rebuilt. When all three of the Abrahamic religions, who all claim the kingdom of heaven and the Temple Mount, when all three of them can come together as one and rebuild the temple together, then it shall be rebuilt. But not before, not until. Human 2.0 will never get it done. And it will be blown up and torn down and attacked and sabotaged 1,000,000 times in the attempt. And wars will break out of it, and it'll just be hell on earth trying to get it done, unless The true foundation of that temple must be set and must be strong and must be humble. You must recognize the masons, the stone workers of that temple, the glass workers of that temple, and the woodworkers of that temple, the carpenters and everyone else working on that temple must recognize that we mortals are all just apprentices, understudies, and the defining virtue of those who be life, of those who are faithful servants, the virtue is patience. The patience of the apprentice, the patience of the understudy, the one who serves the master and waits until the day comes that when master and apprentice can be one. Tiffany says, a strong moral compass has saved my arse many times, especially with intimate relations. Loyalty and devotion just feels better than the alternative. I agree. I can't even go the other way. And Tiffany says, and I know who I do it for, and that isn't me. But that's the nature of selflessness, isn't it? Life is so unnerving for a servant who's not serving. He's not whole without a soul to wait upon. Selflessness, it's what we live for. When we live for others. And the normies can't understand that. They don't get it. And the path of the Bodhisattva admittedly takes that to an extreme. And it's not the path for everybody. I don't go around telling everybody that they have to quit their job and sell their house and give away all their belongings and so on and so forth. I mean, I don't expect anybody to do that. And I no longer expect anybody to understand or allow or encourage me to do that. It's just we cannot be surprised anymore. We cannot be surprised that human 2.0 behaves as it does and reacts as it does. It's a different kind of naivete. It's a different kind of expectation. And you know that expectations are what leads to disappointment. Expectations are what leads to our suffering. And I know for my part, I have made my suffering so much worse because I have given this humanity the benefit of the doubt my entire life. And I was so hopeful and so confident and so determined that if only I can get this message out, and if only I can put it this way, and if only I can make it simple, and if only I can make it accessible, and if only people can see it, boom, things will change. People will get on board. People will jump on the train. We'll get behind the bus, and and every kind of metaphor like that you can imagine. But that's not what's going to happen. And I have to stop being surprised when it doesn't happen. And I have to stop being surprised when people live up to their nature, when they behave at their level. Because how can any of us expect anybody to behave at a level that they're not at? Right? We talked about apprenticeship this entire show and what that means. Right? And children and parents and everything else, right? No master, no mentor can expect their apprentice to have their skills and their experience. That's why they're an apprentice. That's why they're a protege. Mr. Miyagi didn't expect Daniel-san to be able to do karate after waxing a few cars. So it's really important, and that comes down to compassion again. This is why I don't judge or condemn anybody for being where they are and doing what they do. I'm ironically not angry or condemning or judgmental of people that I call naive and stupid. It's just a fact. And a fact is a fact. It's not being judgmental. There's plenty of people who are stupid. It's just, they just behave that way. You're not being judgmental or condemning them. They are what they are. They are at their level. In the same way that I can have a pet who I love, who's you know, a little dense. Doesn't mean I don't love them. Or parents with a child with learning difficulties or whatever. Right? Forrest Gump is one of my favorite films. The main character, the protagonist, right? He's a bit slow. It just is what it is. It doesn't change the fact that he's the hero of the story. It doesn't change the fact that he's capable of doing heroic deeds. And ironically, Forrest Gump does a lot of things in that movie that you can't expect anybody to do. Because if you do, you're going to be disappointed. You can't be surprised when most people wouldn't show the kindness and selflessness that Forrest Gump does, and the courage that he does on so many occasions. And that's the whole point of that movie, is that you don't have to be smart to be courageous and selfless and loving and giving. That doesn't come from intelligence. That comes from someplace else, someplace better, someplace higher. So that even Forrest Gump, who, you know, when Lieutenant Dang and Forrest Gump are in that hurricane, and afterwards, Lieutenant Dang says to Tom Hanks, he says, "Forrest, I never thanked you for saving my life." And he leaps off the boat into the water and he's doing backstrokes in the sunrise on the horizon. And Forrest Gump says, "You know, I think in that moment, Lieutenant Dang made his peace with God." Right? That's the genius of that film. And that's the genius of Forrest Gump. That I'm not a smart man, but I know what love is. Forrest had the eyes to see and the ears to hear. That's what that movie is all about. And in fact, it's our intellect that makes it so hard for us. And that's how Forrest is such a hero in that film, because he's not burdened with that intellect. But even Forrest will say, stupid is stupid does. And if there's right action, there is also wrong action. There is also stupid action. And there is naive action. And calling it that is not judgmental. Calling of that is not condemning. It's simply recognizing the facts. and that compassion, selflessness, and right action are the triad that we all seek. And we'll get there with patience, and we'll get there with the understanding that that belongs to the master. And that's not the stuff of an apprentice. The apprentice, the transformation, the transmutation, the transubstantiation of lead into gold, of matter into spirit. And patience is the key to that. And recognizing our place as the understudy, and knowing that we substitute, we take the place of the real player who is here on the world stage. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Anybody want to open up any new topics or give any feedback or anything at all? I suppose the Americans in the house, you all might be having quite a bit of anticipation. Is it this week that the election happens or next week? I'm not good at keeping track of time. Many people are lots of people have all sorts of anxiety and have all sorts of ideas around the fallout that will happen from the election. I certainly hope, for everyone's sake, that the worst doesn't come about. But if it does, I hope you stay safe and weather whatever storm is, whatever storms are coming, whatever the fallout may be. I hope that the election goes off without a hitch, without too much drama. But there's no guarantees, because we do. Benjamin Ochoa says, I think it already happened, but I don't keep up. I just saw a reel that Trump won. Really? So the election is supposed to be happening today, Sunday? Well, that's interesting. No, it's Wednesday. No, Wednesday, November 6th. Yeah. Or Tuesday, November 5th. It's either Tuesday or Wednesday. I mean, the people in the anybody in the States can clarify, but that's the information that I have here. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I just checked online. It's either Tuesday or Wednesday. It's hard to tell because I'm looking on YouTube and I get different dates coming up. Tiffany says, I predict nothing is going to happen with this election. The game pieces will fall And should all hell break loose, it's not my brothers and sisters that orchestrate it. Whoops, sorry, Tiffany, I didn't put it on screen. So I predict nothing is going to happen with this election. The game pieces will fall, and should all hell break loose, it's not my brothers and sisters that orchestrate it. Okay, fair enough. Benjamin Raphael says, I came across an influencer online named Morg, who's launching a movement called Hyperianism, aimed at advancing humanity. He hosts live streams where he shares his ideas, often interpreting books, with supporters contributing financially as he speaks. Have you considered doing live streams to explore the concepts in your book in a similar way? Well, this is exactly such a live stream. In order to be able to receive contributions, your channel has to be monetized, which means you have to have a minimum number of subscribers. I believe it's 50,000, or it might be 100,000 now, in order for people to be able to leave super chats and so on and so forth. As you can tell, I do not have that many subscribers, and I probably never will. So the shorter answer is no. Although I do the live streams anyway, I can't have supporters financially contributing via YouTube, because that's my channel's not monetized. So, and Tiffany says November 5th is election day, so that's Tuesday. So thanks, Tiffany. I wonder if that's the morgue I'm thinking of. I'm wondering. Yeah, Benjamin says, I believe you're much smarter than he is, though. That's very kind of you to say, but the reality is people don't want that. Benjamin, they don't want the truth. They don't. They want to be told what makes them feel better. I'm not in the make you feel better business. I'm in the helping you be better business. And that's a very subtle yet profound difference. I'm not in the ego business. I'm not in the stroking the ego business. And I'm not in the feeding ego business. And I'm not in the creating Hasnamusen business, which is what the self-help and the new age movements are about. That's what they're all secretly doing. Why? Because it's I want, I am unlimited abundance. I am unfettered healing. I am unfettered knowledge. I. That's what people want. That's what they want to feel. People want to feel. People want to feel like I am the God. I am God. I am enlightened. I am one with the universe and everything. What? That's why they take the drugs. That's why they take the psychedelics, because that's how psychedelics make you feel. And the more you get addicted to that feeling, the more you're being the sorcerer's apprentice, right? You want the magic for yourself. You want the power for yourself. But we all know how the sorcerer's apprentice ends. Because a sorcerer's apprentice is not worthy. He has not earned the use of that power, the use of that magic. It doesn't matter. It's what I want, and it's what I'm entitled to. And don't spread your what do they accuse me of? Your fear-based teachings and your fear-based dogma and your teachings of separation and all the rest. We are all one, and we are all this, and we are all one with God, and the ego is perfectly fine, and we all need the ego, and it just goes on and on and on. And what they call ego death, there's people going around talking about how they have no ego. I say, if you had no ego, you would be a resurrected master. You would be a walking Christ. It doesn't compute. It can't compute. I shouldn't be surprised that it doesn't compute. No one should be surprised it doesn't compute, because this cannot compute. This is a binary human 2.0 device. It cannot compute what can only be comprehended in sixth dimensional consciousness. By the triune human being, by our true self, by the monad, by the consciousness, by the Atman. So give the people what they want. If I gave the people what they wanted, I too could have a channel like Alex Ferrari or more. Like Alex Ferrari has millions of subscribers, and this month he's hosting an event, an online conference that you pay money for, and he's had, I believe, either 7 or 9 of the world's preeminent channelers are going to be speaking at this online conference. I don't know how much he's asking. I don't know how much he's charging, but he's got seven or 9, I can't remember which number it is, of the world's preeminent channelers. I'm not judging. Okay, I'm just sharing information. I'm just sharing facts, and the facts that he himself is not shy about sharing. This is what he puts in the forefront of his advertisements for his conference. Give the people what they want, and the people will come. I'm not in the business of giving the people what they want. I'm in the business of giving the people what they need. And you know as well as I do that given the choice, children will take the candy instead of the Brussels sprouts and asparagus. So it doesn't matter how smart I am, Benjamin. It doesn't matter how honest I am. It doesn't matter how earnest I am or how humble I am or how direct I am or it doesn't matter. It does not matter. Worldly success, anything of worldly success, I am no longer attached to. I cannot be that, because the selfless essence of the master of masters that is longing to enter into this world cares nothing for worldly success, because he has no self. He is completely selfless. And I am committed to that spirit, that essence, to Attlas, Alux, all light, God light, the fire of fires and the light of lights and the being of beings, the master of masters. That is who we are committed to. Me, Attila, and Attlas. That is who we both are committed to. So I appreciate all the advice that people give me about doing this and doing it this way and doing it that way, and maybe I can do this or maybe I can do that. But rest assured that if I do anything the way anybody else is doing it, I'm not going to be doing it the way Alux needs it to be done. I won't be doing it selflessly. Benjamin says, thank you for always being on the level. It really helps us become more aware of our own weaknesses. Thanks for explaining the meaning behind the Sorcerer's Apprentice. You know, we all have to do what's in our heart. We all have to be who we were born to be. This is the one aspect of my truth that I'll give them. Okay, there is a truth that applies to you and you alone, and that is what you are here to do. your purpose. And that's unique to you as it is to everyone. And as it is to me. So I don't prescribe the path of the Bodhisattva to anybody else. Because not everybody is meant to walk it. I would never wish upon others the suffering that I've endured. But I know that the suffering that they endure has a purpose. And what I will wish for them and what I will help them is to find that purpose and fulfill it for themselves through themselves. Such that their suffering, which is unique to them, is utilized and maximized for the purpose that that suffering existed in the first place, which is the self-actualization, the self-realization of their own higher self, their own true self, and your purpose for being. In other words, what you need deep down, not what you want, what you need. And as I've explained, and as you know, that's not going to win me any popularity contests. That's not going to make me a millionaire. It's not going to get me 1 million followers. None of it. None of it. Because this world is about what it wants. People know what they want, and they want it, and they want it now. So it's as simple as that. It's that simple. Anyone have any more comments or questions about anything, really? If not, again, to all of our American friends, may Tuesday come and go as peacefully and with as little drama as it can. And may all of you have a good week. And we'll see you all next Sunday. Excuse me. Until then, all the best to you and yours. Take care of yourselves. And until next we meet, I wish you all inventual peace. Take care, everyone.